Hey y'all, it's been a while, and wow, I haven't set up my tripod since I went away. So, what about 2 years ago? But anyways, that ain't the point. So, it's been I don't know. I got one of them on my YouTube channel from years ago, but I haven't talked about it in a while. So, let's see how I can do this if I don't start crying as usual. My kidney disease is what I'm trying to get into. Um, I first found out about it when I was in high school back in the 90s. I think I was a sophomore. Yeah, I must have been a sophomore. So, 10th grade, um, I was about 16 years old. Actually, I think I was 16. 15 or 16, I don't remember exactly. Gotta think back 30 years ago now. Anyways, I know it was 10th grade, and that was the first time that I had one of my kidney stones that put me in the hospital for the first time, actually. And when I was there, I had a pediatrician kidney doctor at the time, and he told me that I needed to have half of my right kidney removed to try to not have those anymore. So we did that when I was in high school, like I said, 10th grade, and that pretty much took care of going to school for the rest of the year. Um, I think at the same time he also removed some polyps on my left side because he found some stuff in there. I remember waking up and I had bags in my kidneys and couldn't walk. I had to have a nurse help me out of bed at one point because they didn't want me to bed rot. And just standing up, I could feel my legs collapse under me. Took two of them to get me out of bed and keep me upright at that time. And the surgery itself, I think then, because they cut you then, I still have the scar here on my right flank, which is the one I talk about all the time when it bothers me because it's now 30 years old and it's got arthritis and what have you in there. But at that time, they still sliced and diced you open it. So, um, trying to think back before I start crying again. So yeah, took two of them to get me to motivate. And I was holding the IV pole. Um, so that's the start of the stuff that I went through as a teenager. Um, Surgery was 12 hours, like I said, on one side, and I don't know, I think it was also 12 hours on my other side. They did that like a day later or something like that. But after I didn't manage to get home, I think I was in the hospital for over a week, maybe longer than I don't remember exactly. A lot of those memories I kind of suppressed. I don't remember much of them, which I guess is a good thing. Um, they did not send me to physical therapy, which they probably should have, but I was a teenager and they figured 16 years old, you'll come out of it okay. Obviously that didn't happen. So, trying to remember what all of this is because it's a long time ago. So I stayed home and pretty much that was, like I said, that was the end of my school year for that. They home tutored me, which turned into a fight with the school district. Ma had to go over everybody. She went over the principal because at that time the principal we had in the 90s, he was a real mean guy. That isn't the word I want to use, but the word I want to use will probably get me flagged for something that I shouldn't say. So, anyways, he was kind of an asshole. I'll admit that. Fuck it. I'm just gonna say it. Yeah. So yeah, he was kind of an asshole. He was supposed to fill out the paperwork and get me tutors, and 3 or 4 months went by, and It never happened. So mom went over his head and went to the school board and told them, "You better get me a tutor, because he hasn't had any instructions now for months, and if you want him to graduate for the year, he needs to do his schoolwork." Um, Back then, I hated schoolwork. I mean, kids say that, but I came to realize in my 30s the reason why. I'll get to that in a minute or two. So, plus that at that time I was doing my baking um, trade school. I went to a trade school half a year, and it was for baking. That ended, obviously, because there was no way I was going to be able to lift anything after being operated on and having my kidney removed and all that stuff that they did to me. So junior year rolled around, and we found out that I needed to have another operation, which was also 12 hours. So it was basically a repeat of the junior year or sophomore year. But luckily this time I had tutors lined up, and school did not screw around with us. But I basically lost my whole junior year too. And that time was when they operated on my left-hand side. Senior year, I did manage to go back to school. I was only going for about a half a day though. I got exempt from gym class, and if you lived in New York at the time, you had to have mandatory, physical education. Our physical education was not the same as what you guys do now. I mean, we were climbing ropes, and we had dancing and things that we did in school in the 90s. A lot of it has gone by the wayside. So I used to not go to school till about 10 o'clock in the morning, which was nice. I stayed till 10, and our schools at the time in New York got out at 1:40. So I basically went to school for about 3 hours. That also played a part because I was doing my trade school and I dropped that. So, and I also dropped math at that time because we didn't have to have. I had a what they call a local diploma, and at that time, if you didn't want to take math and science or maybe it was history, I don't know, but you could drop classes at the time in high school. So um, I dropped math because math was just too much for me, and again, I realized in my 30s why that was. So I don't remember graduation ceremony, unfortunately, because I know I was there with some of my classmates, because we had a big school. We had about 200 or 300 students. Um, I couldn't tell you what went on at the graduation ceremony, unfortunately, but I know I was there. So then became what I had left of my teenagers years, which was basically staying home and recovering, and try to basically survive. Um, my 20s were just basically filled with more hospital stuff. The stones that I had on my right side moved over to the left side, and my pediatric doctor kept me into my early 20s, if I remember correctly. But again, it was a long time ago. I try to remember the early 2000s, which I don't. So, anyways, every 6 months I was in the hospital, and they were just pulling stones out of my left hand side. But the ones on the right hand side stopped because there was nothing left from them to stay in because they removed half of my kidney. So that went on for, I don't know, a decade. I do remember 9/11. I mean, how could you forget 9/11? Even though at that time I was basically dying. We didn't know it, but yeah, that's basically what was going on. I was basically slowly dying. But it stayed that way until my 30s, when I decided to try to call back some, some life, I guess. And I went to get my culinary degree at a college. And the day I graduated, I found out that my left kidney was killing itself. It was drowning in urine. So they rushed me into the hospital to do reconstructive surgery because the doctor told me at that time I had 5 years left to live. And if we didn't hurry up and do this, that 5 years was going to probably not last. So that was basically the end of, trying to have a life, I guess. And, this is why I don't do these videos that often. So, I did manage to graduate with my culinary degree, but again, life turned to shit, and I was forced to stay home and do nothing, except for basically survive and recover. And that kind of pushed off the kidney stones for a while. I didn't get maybe it was I had about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years where I did not end up in the hospital, and until one day the pain came back, and we found out that the doctors still don't know what was going on. All they told me was I had plant matter growing in my kidney, and they scraped it out. They sent it to a lab, and the lab goes, I don't know what this is, and the kidney doctor had no idea what it was either. She just said it was some type of plant matter. I don't know. So, bodies, they do weird things. So I couldn't work because nobody really wants to hire somebody that's, at that time, basically I had been disabled for over 20 years. And, well, about 15 years, maybe, give or take, something like that. So I did have some odd jobs, I went to try to do a placement service at one point, and they couldn't help me much either because it was the early 2000s and in the 90s, and I had more computer experience than anybody because basically that was my life, was just being on the computer. And I built all of our PCs at that time with help. A friend used to give us parts, and then, we went to the computer shows, and then we went to the computer store that was at the computer show because they opened a store here in the city, and they're still here 35 years later, I guess. And so, yeah, basically, gaming and computers were my thing, and reading. So, throughout the times that I was sick, it wasn't just the trauma of being sick that I had to deal with, but it was, the doctors and nurses, and there was times when I was rolling on the floor because I was in so much pain, and I was begging for pain medicine, and they wouldn't give it to me. And I had some nurse or receptionist go, well, he can't stay down there. He needs to sit in a chair and, sit upright and stop, rolling around on the floor. And there was another hospital where I couldn't sit in bed because when you're in kidney pain, you don't want to lay in bed without pain medicine. And the nurse basically, well, we didn't stay, but the nurse basically said, I'm going to give you enough morphine to keep you in that bed. So basically what she was telling me was she was going to OD me. And since I didn't listen to her, she called security on me, and we walked out of the hospital and went to another one. I've been to every hospital major hospital in the city. And I have, it's not a joke. I have my own shelf down in the basement of X-rays and MRIs and CAT scans and every picture imaginable that you can find. I used to actually joke that they have more pictures of me than she has of me. And I did tell one of the nurses and doctors once when I went back to another hospital. I said, you should go down to the basement because you can find my name on the shelf and all my records is down there." And she actually did. She went down there and she came back and she goes, "Dude, that is unreal. I didn't believe you until I went down there and I found your shelf." So, I did get better, obviously. I mean, I'm never going to be perfect. Never going to have a body that most people can do. Um, I guess that leads up to what happened in 2020. And I didn't know at the time that, you could do delivery service. So Dad started it originally. And he mentioned it to me. He said, maybe you want to try to do that so you can have some money instead of, relying on your family to survive. I mean, it's not the greatest money, but it's still money that's mine. And that's the most awesome feeling to have, to actually be able to make money. Because I didn't be able to do that for 20 years. I mean, I did it a little bit with my writing, but unfortunately, my writing didn't give me enough money to live on. Because there's a reason why they joke, don't quit your day job until you start making enough money to live on. And most authors don't do that, unfortunately. So, I guess that's basically, the last 5 years. Every year I go get my kidney checked up. My next appointment's in October. It's be the end of October. And so we try to do like preemptive X-rays or MRIs or CAT scans or whatever they decide to do for the year, just to make sure that I don't end up with another stone and end up have to go rush to the ER and deal with the people in the ER and take care of it that way. So I guess that's how things stand until until I'm not here anymore. I did get to have some freedom to go traveling. I remember one time I was with my friend in Canada. We went to go visit an author. And I drove all the way home from Canada with a kidney stone. That was a trip. I don't know if she'll remember doing that, but she probably will. And, you get to a point where your pain just, unless it's extreme agony, you just kind of get to ignore it. Your mind blanks it out. And especially, with the one that's in my right hand side, that never goes away. The only time that ever goes away is when I'm sleeping. And some days it's worse, obviously, and some days it isn't. But there is not one day where I don't wake up and I'm in pain. I just learned to live with it. So I guess that's how things are right now. I can't say that I'll ever have a lot of money, but I managed to save some just by doing deliveries. And I got some other ideas that I'm trying to get up, because I don't want to do deliveries for the rest of my life. I mean, they're fun, and it gives me something to do, because I can't really work a normal job. I mean, I go out for about 3 hours, and after that 3 hours, I'm done. I have to come back and rest. I mean, there was times when I was doing it when, that virus was going around. Well, it's still going around, but it was the early days of the virus, and I had a car payment, so I had to go out and make basically my car payment. So I would go out for lunch and dinner, but Ma helped me with that too. She used to be my driver, and we would go out and stay out for about an extra hour or two in the evening. But I don't want to do evening anymore either. So I go out for the afternoon. I do my 10:30 to 2 o'clock, and after that I'm done. I don't want to. I can't do anymore after that. So um so a while back I decided to get one of my whims, I guess you can call it. It's not what I'm going to call it. I'll talk about it in a minute. And do photography. So um I don't know if I'm good at it, but it's something I enjoy doing, and I'm gonna try to maybe get into doing some portraits and photography for people, and they can maybe make some money on that. Because, like I said, I want to do deliveries. I'm in my 40s, and just doing deliveries for the rest of my life is just it's just not something I want to do. So I got some ideas and trying to build some gaming channels, and I have this YouTube channel, but I've been working on this YouTube channel for years, and I didn't. I mean, I was random with it, but in the last 2 or 3 years, I got serious with it, and yeah, it's growing, but I don't know if it'll ever be enough to make money on. But I enjoy doing it. So, and then I started my gaming channel about 2 or 3 months ago, which I probably should have done a long time ago, but I didn't think about it because, like I said, I was trying to survive basically my kidney disease. So to get back to what I was talking about for schoolwork and math and all that stuff, I remember having arguments with my mother, and nobody. Well, let's go back to first grade, because first grade I failed first grade, and they told me I had speech problems, which I still do. I don't talk correctly. I know that, and sometimes I'll say a word and people will look at me like, "What the heck did you just say?" Anyways, growing up in the 80s and 90s as a Gen Xer, nobody talked about ADHD and autism. So I know that started with me in first grade when I had to have speech therapy. And they used to also tell me that I couldn't spell. So they failed me for first grade, and I had to go back and do therapy what was that? Preschool, I guess, preschool. Yeah. First grade preschool, and they, to be honest with you, I don't know how I managed to do it, to get through school. And I was, managed to get to middle school, and, that's when it started getting harder. My English teacher for 2 years told me that, because we used to have to learn the cursive. We had to write cursive then. He's never going to pass English class because he can't write cursive. And his handwriting for printing is atrocious. So he tutored me for 2 years on trying to improve my handwriting. It obviously didn't stick. And again, that's related to my autism and ADD, but they didn't know it. And also, when I was in elementary school, they told Mom to put me on Ritalin, but she refused because she says I'm not doing that. Man, I hated school. High school rolled around, and science obviously was my favorite class because, science class and history. Those were always my two, even in middle school, middle school. And I used to hang out with the history teacher. And at that time, computers were starting to become mainstream. We had a couple in my high school, and my teachers actually started begging me to just, can you type your homework? Because we can't read your handwriting. It's atrocious. I think the only reason I graduated is because of being sick, and they just wanted to get rid of me because they got tired of me. and I got tired of the fighting with my parent, and so they just basically wrote me off. I was one of those kids that just fell through the cracks, and I remember going when I was going to go to college. They tested because they had to do placement tests for college, and at that time I had been writing for a while. So when I did my placement test for college, I aced like the English, and she said, "Your math skills are atrocious. I have never seen anybody. Most people are like 50-50." She goes, "You got like 100% in English, and you got like 20% in math." And she goes, "I hope you're not taking math classes for whatever your degree is, because you'll never pass them." And I didn't. I tried to, after I finished my cooking degree, I was going to go into nutrition at another college, and I dropped out of that within like a month or two because the math classes I would just never pass, and unfortunately for New York State, you had to pass math classes to even get your degree or graduate. So I said, I ain't gonna waste the money to do this. So, living with autism and ADHD and not knowing what it was until my 30s when I researched it myself. I've never been diagnosed, obviously, because they didn't do that when I was in school. And coming up with the money now is never going to happen. And what's the point? I'm halfway through my life. Actually, I'm past halfway through my life, and I mean, it would be nice to have it officially, but there's no reason to. But living with it is exhausting. My brain never shuts off. It's either ruminating on something or it's, I got the music playing in my head. And not just one music. I have like a whole jukebox of music going on. And not just at one time. It's always there. I notice too when I'm like gaming, I'll start stimming. Sometimes if you see my videos, and I'll be like do 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 do, and I don't know. So, and that goes back to high school when I didn't realize I was stimming at the time, but I used to be the pen clicker, and when they didn't like that, I used to be the doodler, and I was making mazes, and I was doing word search, and I would have to get to class early to, chill out and do some reading and be by myself, just so I, didn't get overwhelmed in class. But half the time I was using my doodling as a distraction, as basically a stim to try to focus on what the teacher was talking about, and if they took that away from me, I basically zoned out because my head just wouldn't, my brain wouldn't shut off. I noticed it too that my ADD and autism when I'm driving sometimes um, makes me get a little distracted. So I'm gonna cut this off because it's a half-hour video, and there's just not much more to say. I haven't talked about my kidney disease in a long time, and I know my appointment coming up in October it's on my mind again because it's just reliving all the trauma that I've been through. And I just don't look forward to going to the doctor again. But if it prevents me from being in the hospital, it is what it is. So I hope that explains this enough. And I'm going to get off and basically go decompress because this was a lot to deal with. And hopefully this clears things up and maybe somebody will watch this. I don't know. But I'm going to post it anyways for me because it's been a couple years since I last talked about this, and it was in the early days of my YouTube channel. So have a good one, and I will see you at 7 when I do my how was your day.